So, would you be okay to introduce yourself and tell us what you do for a living, like your job title and what kind of tasks you do?
So my name's Simon Patterson. I'm a freelance Motogp journalist.
Okay.
I've been here since 2016. Initially, I worked as a staff journalist for a newspaper in the UK called Motorcycle News. I worked for them until the middle of 2019. I left for 6 months to go and work for what was then Petronas Yamaha as a press officer. I hated it because I have a lot of opinions and being a press officer wasn't very good for me. So at the end of the year I went freelance and I work for various different publications. I work mainly for a UK website called The Race. And then I work with a little bit for Motorcycle Sports, Portuguese. I do some stuff for TV, little bits for Al Jazeera, some radio stuff for the BBC. So yeah, lots of variety. And I genuinely we do. I've done every Motogp race since the end of 2015. So without missing a single one, I do all the tests. I do a lot of traveling. And I spend most of my days writing about Motogp, social media about Motogp.
What does a kind of like typical week look like for you? Like a travel week or a week in the office?
So we've two completely different types of weeks because we have a race weekend and an off week. A normal race week is arrive at the circuit on a Wednesday, be on site from Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Normally we arrive on Thursday morning at the track. We get set up in the media centre. We speak to the riders. Normally from Thursday, they start at lunchtime. You speak to everyone until the press conference at 5 p.m. Pick out what stories are interesting from that. Spend a few hours writing about it. Then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you watch the sessions all day. You try and speak to everyone at the end of the day, which is super compressed. You write about it again. We try and get everything out online. And then normally Sunday night or Monday as well, we record a podcast. Which is, so our podcast is now part of The Athletic, the sort of big American sports brand. So we work through them. And the podcast is growing really quickly, which is cool because it's something very different for me as well. And then in a normal week where we're not at the circuit, it's either back home, which is Northern Ireland, and we have a planning meeting on the Monday after the race and we plan the coverage until the next one, and it's normally writing 2 or 3 things a day. But when we're in Europe, we do the entire European season in a camper van. So we drive between all the races. So it's not flying, it's driving, but we sometimes will drive to the next race if they're back to back, or if they're not, we will go and maybe spend a few days. We try and spend time with the people that we work with here that we never get to see apart from at the race circuit. We spend a lot of time in Andorra, which is where a lot of the Motogp guys live, so we can be in Andorra and sometimes you'll end up doing some interviews or doing some work while we're there. That's pretty much my...
Yeah, what kind of like, you said that you do, like, you at the end of the day, you sort of try and get all the information and you start to write stories about what's interesting. What kind of hours does that actually mean for you on a race weekend?
So, on a normal, what you consider a race weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because the Thursday media day is a little different. I normally try to be in the media centre about an hour before the bikes start, so like 8 a.m. And if I finish before 8 p.m, it's a good day. So it's long days. Long days, but you know, it's not spending 12 hours riding. So which is not so bad.
It was surprised by how relaxed it actually is in here compared to doing so we've gone to a couple of Formula 1, Formula E, Formula 4 races, or just other sort of four-wheeled race weekends, and being in the media centre is a very different experience to like running around all day. So it's quite a lot. Like it might be a long day, but it's a bit calmer.
It's a bit calmer, and tests are super relaxed as well, which is nice. It's nice to have this slow start to the season a little bit because race weekend will be different and busier. But yeah, we have we try and spend as much time as we can in the paddock as well, because so much of what we do is about finding out things. Finding things out, and you do that by talking to people. This paddock's really good for that because it's very relaxed. MotoGP's, people like to talk. Maybe because there's not so many of us here, it's
easier. Have you ever
easier.
worked in other racing series?
Yeah, I worked in British Superbikes before I came to MotoGP, which is different. It's easier and it's harder. It's easier because there are so few journalists, professional journalists, that it's easy to get access and time with people. But at the same time, because the value of the media isn't seen as much, you can go to find a racer after the race and they've already left without doing any media because they don't have to do, so whereas here you pretty much get a chance to talk to everyone if you need to. So pluses and minuses of working.
I saw the dynamic yesterday of the riders coming up for the interviews and you guys just basically sitting down for a chat as opposed to having to really try and board them.
We're lucky that the relationship with most of the riders here is pretty informal, which is good.
Yeah, it's nice. We ended up hiding because a couple of them sat on the table and we were like, we don't want to be in the back of the pictures. So for a lot of people, I think that one of the hard things is starting to getting into having that media access the first time, or kind of the path that they took in. Do you have any advice on how to do that? How did you go about it? And maybe your academic background as well?
So I get asked this a lot, and the only way to do it is to make sure that people know who you are.
Okay.
And that used to be a process of going to races at a lower level, going to British Superbikes where it's easier to get access, and getting to know the people, because a lot of the people that work here will go to some of those. And it's all about becoming recognised in a small way, because everything goes from there. But since the last 10 years, that's become a lot easier to do because of social media. So if you want to be a MotoGP journalist, start writing about MotoGP. That's important because you can do that through your own social media pages. You don't need a platform, but you can also use social media to interact with the people that you want to be working with. You can talk to journalists. There's a lot of us in here who are really active on Twitter especially. Start conversations, make sure they know your name. Because of how easy it is to access this information and start writing because of social media, do you ever find that amateur writer market is a bit saturated? It depends what you want to write.
Okay.
If you write a race report, there's 1,000 others. If you write, especially if you have opinions, if you write about your own opinions, your opinions are yours, so they're not going to be the same as someone else's. So if you can write a strong piece that you can explain why you think the way that you do, then it can be different enough from others to stand out. And that's maybe one of the things that has helped me. I think is that I write strong opinion columns. I have strong opinions about lots of things that go on in this sport. But it means that people know who I am and recognise my name, and that helps. So
would that involve actually quite a lot of background knowledge to be able to have those opinions and actually really sort of have them stand up to scrutiny?
It's involved a lot of me building contacts. So one of the things that I talk about quite a bit is I think that the standards here for concussion are really, really poor. But I have a guy who runs a sports concussion research facility in America who I interview occasionally to back up my opinions with his science. So it's about, and again with social media, it's super easy to find those guys now, those people that you can reach out to and on any subject.
Somebody asked us a good question. We're going to have to ask that from everyone because it was such a good one. What are some of your normal worries and malfunctions in your career path and in your job?
I think everyone in MotoGP, to some extent or another, has imposter syndrome, where you always wonder if you're good enough to be here. And I know that, for example, I'm not the best writer here by a long, long way. But then I've got other strengths that help make up for it. But I think everyone worries about this. The other thing that I think is maybe more unique to me than everyone else is that because I write a lot of things that criticise the championship, I'm always at risk of maybe not having one of these. So that's always, there's always the worry. The start of the year is always nervous because if I've written some things before, last year, I know that one of the writers in the championship tried to have me thrown out of the championship because I wrote something that he really didn't like. So there's always that worry.
Yeah. So on the other hand, I guess like the whole criticism is part of journalism. You can't always have everyone agree with you.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I keep telling myself is that it's part of the job. But yeah.
Fair enough. So what kind of process did you go through to get to this job? You said you worked in British Superbikes before.
So I grew up in racing. My family ran a race team in Ireland.
Okay.
Doing road racing. I live Man TT, and so my background is there. And I started writing and taking photographs when I was still at school, just as a hobby.
Yeah.
And from there I got to know some people, and it kind of built into a good part-time job for me while I was at school and at university.
Did you study journalism at uni?
When I went to university, I didn't know what I wanted to do long term. I didn't know if this would be a career path. So my degree is in forensic science.
Interesting.
So it's actually a little bit.
That explains your concussion situation.
Part of it's actually it's not as removed from this as you think because it's quite analytical, a lot of report writing, a lot of analysis, and then as well elements of photography and videography. So it's not as random as it seems.
Yeah.
And then I left university and I went directly to motorcycle news because when I was working as a photographer while I was at university, they were one of our clients. Okay. So I knew some people there. I went in at a super junior role, working on the website, and then moved to British Superbikes and 3 years in British Superbikes and 3 years in Motogp for them.
Would you say that already sort of having a few connections is essential, or can you actually start building from scratch?
Yeah, you can build from scratch.
Yeah.
You can build from scratch. I think especially the lower down that you start almost. I was really lucky in Ireland. There's not much in the way of media. So when I was able to start there wasn't many people.
Yeah, so you already worked.
So you were already like a step forward.
Yeah.
And it depends kind of on the championship that you want to start in or the route you take. But I think there's always an opportunity to come in and be kind of that person.
Yeah.
A really good example here is there's an Italian guy who runs a really, really popular social media. I think he has a website, but it's mainly social media. He's specializing in Moto E.
Oh, okay.
Because when Moto E started, no one here specialized in it. Yeah. So he found a way to specialize in something. He was interested in electric vehicles, and he turned it into now where he is the go-to guy when it comes to Moto E. Yeah. So there's always a way to make a path and to find a way in. I think probably especially these days with in two wheels, with all of the young championships that Dorna run. If you're from Portugal or Spain, go and try and find a way to work with European Talent Cup. If you're in the UK, British Talent Cup, because then you get to know the people who run the championship, who are also in some ways the people who run the championship here, and the riders move up with you, which is nice. So.
How much of your work is field-based? How much is at the track, and how much is office-based in terms of how much commitment do you actually end up doing inside the media centre? How much do you do outside, and how much do you move around? So
the majority on a race weekend, the majority is media centre.
Okay.
It's maybe 75-25% media centre at Paddock, because you need to be here to watch bikes on track.
Yeah.
Normally one session a weekend I'll go out and watch somewhere on the circuit.
Yeah.
But the majority of it is in here. At least until the end of the day, and then maybe I'll spend a few hours in the evening. We'll go and get dinner with some of the teams or something like this to catch up with people. None of my work is office based when I'm not here because we're entirely remote.
Yep.
But it normally means maybe 3 or 4 hours a day when I'm not here, actually sitting down to both to write and to think about what I'm going to write.
Yep.
You know, and sometimes I can do things like go cycling, and I'll get back from the cycling and I'll have like 2 stories written in my head because I've been thinking I use the space to. So it's not always sitting at the laptop.
Yeah.
But
it gives you a bit of freedom, like to live your life and also do like a good job of what you enjoy.
Exactly. And one of the reasons I left MCN was that the culture there is really office based, because like 90% of their staff are office based. Yeah. But coming from Motogp and having to go back and sit in the office was just destroying me. You know, because you would work like maybe 70 hours at a race weekend, and then you'd have to go and sit in the office, and you'd be finished in 2 hours, and you just, so what do I do now? I just sit here and
drink coffee.
Yeah, exactly. So that was part of the reason for the change.
Fair enough. How would you compare you've said you basically worked in motorbikes pretty much your whole life.
Yeah.
But how would you say, from your impression of what it's like to work in four-wheeled motorsports, like the culture difference with the media? How would you compare that?
It seems like, so I know I said that MotoGP takes media more seriously than, say, British Superbikes, but it's still not taken as seriously as it is in four ways.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes there's maybe we're not seen as something that is important enough, both by the riders, but mainly by the teams and the championship. Mm-hmm. We're kind of always forgotten about because TV is super important here, and I think in Formula One in particular, written media is given a little bit more importance.
Yeah. Do you feel like maybe MotoGP will benefit from more like Formula One Drive to Survive? I mean, I know that the series happened, but do you think it will benefit from a bit more of an Americanized push?
Yes, completely. I've made this point before. This is going back to the articles I write that sometimes they don't like. My comparison is always that Formula One grew to a certain point under Bernie Ecclestone, and then a team of Americans who are really good at sports as a business, came in and took over, and that's what's moved it to the next level. Whereas we're at the point where MotoGP has been grown to a certain point by Carlos Ezpeleta, and the people who are going to take over from him are his children, and that's not good business.
Would you not be afraid that it would be a bit more, let's say, corporate, like maybe F1 is from a certain point of view?
I think that the good thing here is that we're a long way behind F1, that we can be a little bit more professional without losing what makes MotoGP what it is. Yeah. We've got room to grow without losing anything yet. And honestly, I think that some of the things that the championship does right now are more of a risk than what would happen in a with a complete like the sprint races, which are pretty much universally unpopular inside the paddock, and we're kind of forced upon the paddock without anyone knowing about it. I think that's not necessarily the sort of thing that would have happened under new management, and so.
We do some fun questions.
Okay.
That end up torturing anybody we interview. The one that people struggle with the most is, if you could badly describe your job in 5 words and accurately describe it in 3.
Badly in 5?
Yes.
Talking shit about motorbike racing. And in 3, it's harder in 3. I guess telling the truth. Okay. Trying to.
And if you could give one piece of advice to somebody who is just starting out, or like, what do you think is the most, like, the one pearl of wisdom that people should bear in mind?
Like we said, get to know people.
Yeah.
Cool.
who's the nicest person you ever worked with? And if you could do any other job, what job would you do?
Ooh, nicest person I've ever worked with. Good question. In terms of riders?
Yeah, why not?
Probably Danilo Petrucci. Yeah. Danilo is just, he's like a normal guy who is really fast on a motorbike. He's not like a superstar racer. Okay, he's just, yeah. And if I could do anything else, probably I would like to do the same job, but about something more serious and important.
Okay.
Yeah. Politics or, yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much.